during spray cooling. And the presenter is Marija Gajevic Joksimovic. I hope that I pronounced it the right way. And we don't see you.
So
you're there. Okay, fine. Now you can see.
Yeah, do you see my screen? Do you hear me good? Is it everything fine?
We can hear you very well and can see your presentation. So please, the floor is yours.
Okay. Thank you for such a nice introduction. Name is pronounced good. Thank you. Title of my presentation today is Influence of Industrial Lubricant Addition on Heat Transfer Regimes during Spray Cooling. So first we start with motivation. What is motivation for this type of research? So namely, in hot forging industry, power hammer or dies must be cooled down after each working cycle to reduce their thermomechanical fatigue and to reduce die wear. Also, in order to achieve a less friction between working parts and dies, also lubrication of the contact surfaces is needed. In today's forging industry, mostly widely used cooling method is, of course, spray cooling. This leaves us with one objective, which is characterization of spray cooling processes using complex liquids during, of course, spray cooling. And our liquids are lubricant solutions. So lubricant Lubrodal F327 produced by the company Fuchs Lubricant is used as a base for preparations of our lubricant solutions. It can be described as water-based, water-miscible, graphite-free dye lubricant widely used in forging industry. So it's supplied to us, this lubricant, as a concentrate containing a specific amount of organic salts that provide lubrication when utilized. Also, some additional inorganic and organic components, so-called surfactants and binders, are present as well in order to stabilize the concentrate and to promote the spreading of adherent lubricant layers on a die surfaces. So, of course, before spraying this lubricant, further dilution with water is needed, but further steering is not needed because the main component, organic salts, are completely dissolved in water. In our experimental campaign, we used 8 different lubricant to water mixture ratios, thus achieving 8 different organic salts volumetric concentration range, which are presented here on the slide. Our experimental setup, which is used for observation and analysis of a heat transfer due to a spray impact of a lubricant solution onto a very hot substrate, is presented schematically on the slide. So the system contains 4 subsystems comprising a spray generation system connected to a fluid supply. Of course, we have a heating system with temperature measurement and control. We have an observation system with a high-speed camera and backlight illumination. And of course, we have a computer control unit for acquiring experimental data and controlling experimental flow. Spray is produced by one commercial, one component liquid-driven nozzle, and different impact velocities of the spray droplets can be achieved by varying the height between the hot substrate and nozzle with a linear traverse. Also, by supplying different pressure to the nozzle, we can achieve sprays of different impact properties. What is important to mention that after each experiment is completed, we have a solid residue present on the substrate due to the complexity of our liquids. And in order to proceed with next experiment, the substrate surface needs to be cleaned. For that purpose, it's not presented here, but we have a cleaning tank. And during the cleaning process, valves downstream of the fluid supply are closed, thus enabling only cleaning liquid to be pushed through the system. This also ensures a good repeatability between experiments. So on the right, you can see our experimental setup in use. Of course, here's just for show, surface was not heated and camera is not there, but just for you to see how it looks like. Okay. We are, of course, interested in heat flux and surface temperature of our substrate. So in order to evaluate both heat flux and surface temperature, we have to solve inverse heat conduction procedure using temperature readings from thermocouples embedded in a substrate as an input data. So our thermocouples are type K, class 1 with opening measuring tip, thus enabling us quick response time. These thermocouples are embedded into a stainless steel substrate, and they are arranged in 2 rows. First row is 0.5 millimeters below the substrate, thus enabling a quick response time, and the second row is 20 millimeters below the substrate surface. Next, our substrate is placed into a watertight housing with a copper heater screwed on the bottom of the substrate. Additionally, the substrate is insulated completely from the sides and from the bottom, thus enabling us to have our heat flux problem as a two-dimensional, axisymmetric, and with a diabatic condition at the curved surface area. So heat transfer happens only through the top surface. So inverse heat conduction problem is solved by a procedure published with Monde and coworkers. Before I proceed with some results from lubricant solution experiments, I want to show you how the temporal evolution of a heat flux, of a local heat flux, looks like for a known case, which is of course distilled water. So for this case, we have at the very beginning of a cooling process, we have, of course, film boiling regime, where substrate is covered by a thin vapor layer and heat flux remains low and nearly constant for 80 seconds here when Leidenfrost point is reached, and there we can observe some first liquid patches identifying transitional boiling regime. With increase of heat flux, we have, of course, critical heat flux reached, and after that, evidently completely wetted substrate and nucleate boiling. In contrast to that, even a small amount of lubricant added to a spray liquid significantly changes the values of a heat flux, especially at the early stages of spray impact. Namely, the values of heat flux is the same for distilled water and for lubricant solutions only during the first few seconds of the spray impact. After that, as you can see here, Leidenfrost point can be recognized as a kink in corresponding curves, indicating a sharp increase of a heat flux, which consequently reaches a critical heat flux, which is here identified as way higher than that for pure water. This behavior can be maybe better observed on the plot right, where we have temporal evolution of a surface temperature during spray cooling. You can see here that the temperature before cooling was 445 degrees, and experiments were stopped when the first thermocouple reached 100 degrees. As you can see here, at the very beginning of a spray cooling process, we have a sudden change of temperature slopes, indicating that for lubricant solutions, Leidenfrost point is moved way higher in contrast to distilled water. And this we come to a conclusion that addition of lubricants leads to the suppression of film boiling. Namely, for very high lubricant concentration, Leidenfrost point is identified at a very high temperature, here 420 degrees, with film boiling phenomena totally suppressed. If we then decrease, of course, lubricant concentration, we see that lighter frost point is accordingly moved to lower temperatures, but with film boiling regime partially or almost totally suppressed, as you can see on the graph. But also what is important to mention, with increase in lubricant concentration, we have a decrease of time instances corresponding to first a lighter frost point, then critical heat flux, and of course total duration of cooling, which is way shorter. Now we want to see some visualizations. So we are interested to see how a phenomena of a spray impact onto a hot substrate looks with addition of lubricants. And in that means here we will observe two boiling curves. One is, of course, for distilled water, and the other one is for one exemplary lubricant solution, and all the parameters during spraying process were kept the same. At a very high temperature for pure water, we of course observe film boiling regime, where a substrate is covered by a vapor layer, and phenomena of drop rebound can be observed. In contrast to that, for our lubricant solutions, we have separate wet spots that form at the very high temperatures. These spots, they merged as a liquid volumes and generate a very dense foam until a completely developed, relatively thick foam layer is present on the surface, as you can see here. Maybe we will rewind it a little. And now, if we proceed with decrease in surface temperature for distilled water, of course, we observe transitional boiling with fast inception of liquid patches, which you can see here. And for our lubricant solutions, we have expansion of a foam layer, which is here associated with transitional boiling. So substrate is completely covered by a foam layer. If we, of course, then proceed further, for distilled water, we have, after reaching critical heat flux, we have developed nucleate boiling. And for lubricant solution, we still can observe foam, but breakage of the foam layer is happening due to a very low temperature and to the incoming spray liquid. As you can see, the strong difference between these two boiling curves is caused by very intensive foaming phenomena observed for lubricant solutions. If we now ask ourselves, is this foaming related to initial wall temperature before spray cooling or not? So in that means we have here boiling curves for three different wall temperatures, substrate temperatures before cooling. The upper video you already saw, and it was captured during continuous cooling from 445 degrees, but it was captured somewhere here. And the video on the bottom was captured on 140 degrees, but the cooling started here. And as you can see, also we observe foam bubbles that grow larger. They do not detach or collapse, do not depart from the substrate. And of course, we again see this foaming phenomena, but we can conclude that the mechanism of sharp increase of heat flux is more pronounced with initial, with higher initial wall substrate temperatures. We mentioned before this suppression of film boiling at high wall temperatures for our lubricant solutions, but of course we have to explain it. Why is it happening? We know for pure water, we have in film boiling regime, we have a drop rebound. And for our lubricant solutions, we observed this very extensive foaming phenomena. It's thus rather tempting to say, film boiling is suppressed by this foaming phenomena, but this is not necessarily correct. Namely, foaming phenomena as well as suppression of film boiling is caused by one very same reason, identified as the presence of salts and surfactants in our solutions. Namely, during solution spray impact, we of course have intensive evaporation in close vicinity of the wall, and of course a volatile component, in our case water, evaporates first, leading to a fast local increase of salts and surfactants on our substrate, and even to the salt crystallization. This leads to a formation of this wet accreted granular layer, which leads to the pinning of the impacting droplets. As you can maybe see here, that the impacting droplets are pinned to this layer, and then the foaming starts. This pinning prevents a drop rebound, thus suppressing the film boiling regime. It was also interesting for us to evaluate what will happen if we do the spray impact on an already deposited solid layer from the last experiment. So you can see here two boiling curves. One is a spray impact on a polished surface, and the other one is an impact on the already deposited solid layer from last experiment. So surface was not clean. As you can see, when we have this layer, no film boiling regime can be observed, and this solid residue generates a really dense foam layer, which also is indicated here with this jump in a slope, of course, with fast increase of heat flux and the better cooling rate. And here around 190 degrees, we have a breakage of a foaming layer, and we apparently almost completely wetted substrate and nucleate boiling. So we mentioned this pinning, and we mentioned suppression of film boiling. So we can, of course, estimate this pinning time from the data I showed before, which is also shown here. And this pinning time is defined as an inception of a sharp reduction of the substrate temperature caused by a fast increase of a heat flux. We can see here that for larger concentrations, we have a reduction of pinning time, because presence of our dissolved salts, they increase the rate of formation of the deposited layer. We come to a summary. So during this measuring campaign, we perform measurements and calculations, of course, of heat flux for a broad range of lubricant solutions, and we performed over 200 experiments. We saw that dissolved organic salts, they influence significantly the known heat transfer regimes. Of course, for distilled water, we already know what happens, but for lubricant solutions, we observe this foaming phenomena over the entire range of wall temperatures, a significant increase of heat flux, and a reduction of total cooling time, and most importantly, suppression of film boiling regime. We explain the suppression of the film boiling regime by the pinning of the droplets to this, as I mentioned, deposited layer. Thank you for your attention, and I would be happy to answer some question if there is any.
Thank you so much, Maria. That's a good question. Let's see. So, we have questions from the floor. We are very well in time. So, Tali.
Yeah, so thank you for a very interesting talk, and I love your ending with Snoopy. Perfect. Yeah, you don't seem from the right generation, but you got the right picture.
Yeah, I'm a Snoopy lover. Yeah, I was not sure it was appropriate, but I was like, yeah, please, Snoopy.
That's perfect. But anyways, I wanted to ask you that that's completely new for me. So I wanted to ask you, what is the difference between lubricant solution and unfiltered tap water?
So basically, we have, I'm a part of one industry project, and then we receive like real lubricant concentrate, which has like its use for lubrication, and then we dilute it in order to spray it. So it's already used in industry. So it has inside, of course, the main component, which provides lubrication. It had some additional inorganic and organic components, so-called, let's say, surfactants and binders, and also some other chemicals to make it stable. So I was also, when before I try to do some experiments. We also have graphite lubricants, and I just mix graphite with water and I got nothing. So there are some components on a chemical level which makes this concentrate stable, and diluted with water, of course, it can be sprayed.
No, but what I meant to ask is, what if you take unfiltered tap water without lubricants?
You mean just to spray water?
Yeah, because we put in a lot of effort to filter water. For example, if we want to drink them, right? So let's say
yes.
you take unfiltered droplet I mean, they contain ions, they contain dust, they contain many things, right?
Yeah. So usually in our experiments we use double distilled water because also my the colleague who worked before me, he used also distilled water, but I still did not try to mix it with the tap water because of some of course some bacteria is always present there, but without this reverse osmosis purifier or something, it can happen that something will react with lubricants and then form some new form of life in my spray experimental setup. But I will try once and let you know.
Okay. Thanks. That was very, very interesting. Thank you.
Thanks.
Other questions? Let's see. I have a question because I heard that Ilia, when he was in Bergamo, I was also there, represented.
I could not come to Bergamo. I was in Slovenia, but yeah.
So the idea is that the lubricant is part of the process in this kind of industrial process. So they like to have the lubricant. Right? So because in fact, my question was because the lubricant is staying at the end, so it's not going to evaporate. So
so it stays. It provides good wetting, and so it reduces the friction. It should stay. It should also have a good wetting on the tools. Yeah. So then. In this case, you need it. But in other cases, you don't want to have some other, let's say, contaminants in the surface. So this means that, in fact, if you're looking only at the physics, so what is happening is this kind of pinning effect, but then also the forming effect. Yeah. So I'm wondering if you put something that is going to evaporate, that is producing a form, not like a fat acid, for example. What is happening? Is happening the same or not? So, because if you are going back to the basic, let's say, so the application is very clear. So you need at the end the lubricant on the surface. But on the other side, he's saying this experiment is very interesting because he's saying something about the effect of the forming on the Leiden crust, let's say, the thin body generation. So, can you comment on that? So, if you have something that's forming and then it's evaporated, what is that? Yeah, so that's a really interesting question, and that's a good question. And it's hard to differ, for example, because it's when you say complex liquid, that's why we I can show you just a second. That's why we are now observing on the single drop level. I just started that measuring campaign. But with the bottom view setup, so we can see really like this initial contact and what happens, because it's hard to differentiate the influence really of these salts and influence of surfactants, because it's known. Also, Professor Chandra has, I think, more papers on that. That the addition of surfactants leads to this foaming. So it's really hard to differ what in which quantity is causing which effect to be more pronounced, and so for that reason I'm now doing this bottom view experiments in order to better understand. But thank you very much for the question. I will think about it. Intensively. So we have a question in the chat from Mateusz Barberi. Mateusz, do you want to say the question? I read it later on.
Mateus?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yep.
Good. Okay. So thanks for your very nice presentation. And the question goes in the direction of your slide number 13, where
13.
you showed.
Let me just just speak and I will find the slide.
Yeah, where you showed some differences between the heat flux exactly, using the clean surface and the surface on the surface with residuals. And the question mainly goes in direction of the difference between these two behaviors. Maybe you commented about this in the presentation, and I couldn't catch it very well. But does it goes or the existence of these solid residuals in the surface increase the pinning effect when the droplets are impinging on it, suppressing the film boiling regime and inducing higher heat transfer coefficients?
Yes. So basically, we have this layer present, and then when a spray impacts, we have almost completely at the same moment we have a really good wetting. So we do not have drop rebound. We know that at this point heat flux is really low, but here we have this really intensive foaming, which cools down the substrate, and because of that, we really have a fast increase of heat flux and a cooling rate. I can show you how this. I have it somewhere. So it looks somehow here. So this is how a residue look after spraying process, and it was left on the substrate. And then when we have, I will show you once again how it looks. Just a second for me to find my slide. Yeah. So you can see here how we have like this separate wet spots that emerge, and imagine now that when we have here a solid residue, the whole substrate is covered almost immediately by this foam, and because of that, no film boiling at all can be observed. I think also, so if you look at this picture here, the third one in a row, this is how it looks like. Almost immediately after a spray impact. So because of that, we of course have a really fast increase of heat flux.
Because we are also investigating something similar, not with sprays, but with immersion of a hot probe in a solution, in a liquid solution. And maybe it's also related. We are also going to measure related to the surface energy of the solid, or the that can have an effect on the wettability, and also on the impingement and the pinging effect and the pinning effect of the droplets on the surface.
Yeah, so of course. So that's really interesting. Maybe we can exchange some ideas. Also, I will just write your name down.
Mateus, which is your affiliation, Mateus?
Sorry?
Which is your affiliation, Mateus?
I work at the University of Bremen.
Okay. I will contact you.
We need to close this part. Again, thank you so much, Marija.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you so much. Again, clap. A virtual clap. and then okay, we can continue with the next presenter. Who is let me see the program. I think Joachim. Joachim, Dominic.